let me just highlight a few things in this opening remark. One is, why is innovation needed in India? Second, if innovation is needed, what is India's innovation challenge? Can we frame that? And then third is, how do we do it? And the how do we do it is what I want to cover in the masterclass, so I want to leave that aside. Let me talk about the first two questions. In fact, Mr. Narendra may have already addressed the first issue. Why do Indian corporations, why do they need to worry about innovation at all? If I were to look at India's economic history, India's political and cultural history is very long, but India's economic history is very short. It started perhaps when we won independence in 1947. It's about 70 years old, 75 years old. And India's economic history, I put in three phases. Phase one is from the time we won independence up until the time we liberalized, which is about, say, 50 years. In phase one, that was the license Raj, that was the controlled economy, where Indian companies didn't have to be efficient to make money. You can be highly inefficient. As long as you got license to produce something, there are customers always waiting to buy it. So therefore, Indian corporations pretty much were, with a few exceptions, were highly inefficient, but they all made money because consumers could be simply asked to absorb the inefficiency. That's kind of phase one. The phase one of the economic history of India is the last 2 decades since liberalization. Now, during this phase, Indian corporations prospered by just becoming more efficient because they had put on so much fat during the license Raj. All that they had to do is to shed the fat. As long as they were efficient, they were making money. So phase two is really the excellence in Indian industry is primarily because we follow total quality management, continuous process improvement. We became more efficient. That game is over. There's only so much juice that's left by doing total quality management, Six Sigma, Lean. That game is over. If India has to become excellent in the next 2 decades, it's going to be breakthrough thinking. It's going to be breakthrough innovation. So innovation is going to be the next frontier we need to capture. So that's the reason why innovation is so critical for India. In fact, the slogan in India should be make in India, it should be innovate in India. Now, if innovation is so critical in the next 2 decades, what exactly is the innovation challenge Indian corporations need to master? One way I can think about that and frame it is, I say there is not just one India, there are 3 Indias. There is India number 1, and India number 1, as this picture shows, this is the top of the economic pyramid. And India number 1 resides in any cities in India, which would be a tier 1 city, which has got 4 million population level, by and large. Of course, the tier 1, India number 1 also resides in villages, but primarily India number 1, the top of the economic pyramid, primarily resides in tier 1 cities. This would certainly include the 4 big metros, Madras, Calcutta, Bombay, Delhi, but it also extends beyond to 12 other cities. This would be cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad. Now, India number 1 is what I call the developed India. Most corporations really cater to the needs of India number 1. India number 1 probably has about 10 times the per capita income of the average Indians. This is the affluent India, where the customers can consume products that are designed and produced in the West. Primarily, Indian corporations as well as multinationals are catered to India number 1. Then there is India number 2, India number 2 is the emerging middle class. This is the developing India. And India number 2, in terms of the size of the population, would be 3 or 4 times India number 1. This is the middle of the economic pyramid. This would be tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, the small towns. Clearly, India number 1 has probably 10 times the per capita income as compared to India number 2. But India number 2 clearly is a whole lot of non-consumers who have to be converted into consumers. That requires breakthrough thinking. You cannot simply offer the products you're offering to India number 1 and simply bring down the cost a little bit. This requires a leapfrog thinking. This requires fundamental breakthrough innovation to capture India number 2. So, in terms of the innovation challenge, there was a big innovation challenge to cater to the needs of India number 2. Then there is India number 3. India number 3 resides primarily in the 600,000 villages in India. In terms of per capita income, I would say India number 2 probably has about 10 times or 5 times per capita income as compared to India number 3. India number 3 is underdeveloped India, where the markets have to be created. So, in order to move from India number 1 to India number 2, you have to have breakthrough innovation. In order to move from India number 2 to India number 3, you have to have another breakthrough innovation. You can't simply offer the products you're offering to India number 2 and simply water it down and cater to India number 3. If you want to satisfy India number 2 and India number 3, it requires frugal innovation. Now, frugal innovation is about offering very high quality products at affordable prices. Ultra low cost plus world class quality. That's what you need to really satisfy India number 2 and India number 3. As an example of frugal innovation, we remember the India's mission to Mars a couple of years ago. The interesting thing about that is, before India sent the satellite to Mars, there were only 3 countries which did that before that. One was the United States, the second was European Space Agency, and third was Russia. The 4th country to do it is an extremely poor country called India. But that's not the most interesting thing. The interesting thing is India spent $75 million on its mission to Mars. Just about the time India sent a mission to Mars, America sent a mission to Mars which costed $2 billion. India spent $75 million and America spends $2,000 million. And both are doing the same thing. As we are speaking, both satellites are circling around Mars. This is what I mean by frugal innovation. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was a Hollywood movie that was made. I don't know whether you saw it or not. The movie is called Gravity. It is a movie about a failed mission to Mars. And that movie costed $150 million. So, a Hollywood make-believe failed mission to Mars cost twice as much as India's successful mission to Mars. This is what I mean by frugal thinking. We need breakthrough thinking to capture India number 2 and India number 3. As an example of breakthrough innovation, how about what David Bhaskar Group has achieved in an industry we will call newspaper publishing as a dying industry? In newspaper publishing, they have fundamentally revolutionized that. In 20 cities that David Bhaskar entered, they are leaders from day 1 in the newspaper publishing industry. By the way, this is extraordinarily difficult. If you think about the economics of newspaper publishing, the economics of newspaper publishing goes something like this. You lose money every time you produce and sell a newspaper. Why? Because cost of subscription subscription never covers the cost of producing and circulating a newspaper. So when newspapers launch, they don't launch with million copies, because if you launch with high volume, you lose a lot of money. Therefore, they launch a few units and then let the ad revenues catch up. Once the ad revenue catches up, then you start making money. Then you launch some more and let the ad revenues catch up. That is how the newspaper economics works. In that context, David Bhaskar became leaders in the newspaper industry from day one by entering markets which are already entrenched by incumbents. This is the most extraordinary thing. In fact, the first city David Bhaskar entered was Jaipur. When they entered Jaipur, there were already 3 newspapers in Jaipur. One had a circulation of 100,000 units, which was the market leader. The second newspaper had a circulation of 50,000 units, and the third newspaper had a circulation of 25,000 units. Now, David Bhaskar Group enters that market. By the way, not only the industry economics dictates that you have to build your volume in small quantities. In fact, the number one market share leader in Jaipur with 100,000 units, they built the market position over 30 years. Not only when you enter, you have to enter in small quantities. It turns out in the newspaper business, morning habits are extremely difficult to break. That's like your morning beverage. Once you settle on a morning beverage, you don't change. Imagine that's your situation. You're entering a city which is already well entrenched with 3 newspapers, and morning habits are difficult to break. And even if it is a virgin territory, you can never launch a newspaper in big volumes. That's the situation you face. The only way you can break through in that situation is by coming up with out-of-the-box thinking. Thinking like the India's Mars mission. You have to have breakthrough innovation. Now, what did David Bhaskar Group do? The first thing that they did when they went to Jaipur, they identified India number 2 and India number 3 who were not subscribing to a newspaper. So, if someone is not subscribing to a newspaper, there is no morning habit you have to break. In addition, they identified in the city of Jaipur, India number 1, the affluent India, who were already subscribing to a newspaper, but if the right newspaper was offered, they had the money to subscribe to a second one. So they identified 200,000 households who either did not subscribe to a newspaper or could afford to subscribe to a second newspaper. The point being, they went after non-consumers. The moment you go after non-consumers, you not only don't have to break the morning habit, but the incumbents will not be woken up because you are not affecting their market share. The second thing that they did, you see, whenever anybody launches a new product, you have to do market research. Typically, in market research, you do random sample. That means, if you want to understand what a population of 200,000 households need, you don't need to survey 200,000 households. You can survey a random sample. And as long as you choose the right random sample, you can generalize to the population. That's the industry practice. David Bhaskar didn't want to follow industry practice. Breakthrough thinking implies you don't copy what others are doing. You have to come up with breakthrough thinking. You have to come up with non-linear thinking. So what David Bhaskar Group did, they decided they will survey the entire 200,000 households. If you want to survey the entire 200,000 households, the problem is it is very expensive. So how did a newspaper group, which is so small, which don't have a lot of resources, how do you survey 200,000 households? This is what they did. They went and identified all the colleges in the city of Jaipur and went to those college students and told them, we have a market research activity in which we want you to help us. And we can't pay you. We are too small. We can't pay you. Of course, the students asked, why the hell do I need to do survey for you if you're not going to pay me? They said there are three benefits. First, this is going to be a massive survey of 200,000 households. So it's going to be exciting. Second, you're a college student. You need a job. This would be a good way for which to enhance your resume. You can write in your resume you work for a company. Third, anybody who does a good job in this market research, we will subsequently employ them. Because we are going to become successful. When we become successful, we will employ those people who do a good job in the market research. By the way, 50% of the people who they selected for this market research, they subsequently absorbed in Daily Basket Group. Then they went to all the unemployed youth in Jaipur and told them, you are unemployed, you have nothing to do anything. Why don't you come and do market research? You're wasting your time doing nothing. You do market research, and if you do a good job, we'll give you employment in our organization. So, with the result is, they got 700 market research folks. And those 700 people who did market research, obviously these are not experts in market research. So they gave them nice uniform. They gave them training for 1 month in grooming and presentation, communication, etc. One thing the 700 people had was tremendous enthusiasm, because these were youngsters. They had tremendous enthusiasm, even though they were not conventional market researchers. But you trained them. So they went to the 200,000 households and asked them, what do you need in a newspaper? Why are you not subscribing to one? What do you need in a newspaper so that you will subscribe to one? They told them all kinds of things. Well, we want the price to be XYZ. We don't like advertisements on the front page, blah, blah, blah. So they collected all that information. Then they did something extraordinary. They went back to the same 200,000 households a second time. This time, they had a marked up newspaper. So they went to a household and said, look, you said if we have these kinds of information in the newspaper, you will buy one. Now I've got a prototype newspaper. And if you subscribe for the newspaper now, you will get a 25% rate on the subscription rate. And there will be money back guarantee if you are not satisfied with the newspaper. Of course, the newspaper will come only 9 months later. And 9 months later, when it comes, if you are not satisfied, you will get a money back guarantee. With the result, 172,000 households signed up for a newspaper that was not even published, which was going to be published 9 months later. And they prepaid. Think about that for a moment. In a tough industry, they got prepaid subscriptions for 172,000 copies. Then they went to the advertisers and said, you know what, I got a newspaper which has got a guaranteed 172,000 subscription. Why don't you place the ads? Not only that, we know the complete economic profile of this 172,000 subscribers. They did big data analysis even before big data became popular. They launched in the city of Jaipur with 172,000 on day one. They were market leaders from day one. They have replicated this in 20 cities in India. This is a local language newspaper. They started in Hindi, they produced in Marathi, they got one English newspaper. but everything else is local language newspaper. By the way, in India, if you're a local language newspaper, you can be number one in one city, but languages don't travel. In fact, the major media houses in India are always in English. In that context, today, Daily Bhaskar Group is number one newspaper in India in terms of circulation. Number four in terms of circulation in the world. This is the potential if we can do breakthrough thinking. And Daily Bhaskar is not alone. Today afternoon, I'm going to have a conversation with Narayana Health. And Narayana Health does open heart surgery for $3,000. And open heart surgery in the US costs $150,000. That's breakthrough thinking. Their cost of open heart surgery is 50 times lower than what we charge in the US. Yet their quality is world class. In fact, the quality of Narayana Health is even better than what you get in the US. Better quality than the US at 1/50th their cost. This is what I mean by breakthrough thinking. And if you really want to unlock India number 2 and India number 3, then I say corporations in India have to fundamentally change the way they approach. Leadership has to fundamentally change their mindset. And what I have on this is a 2x2. On one axis is business heart versus social heart. Another axis is business mind versus social mind. Now, what I mean by business heart versus social heart is a business heart would be, what is the purpose of your enterprise? A business heart is to maximize shareholder value. Social heart is to do good. Business mind versus social mind is the process you use to make decisions. Business mind is all the good techniques we teach in MBA programs. 5 forces, 4 Ps, 3 Cs, whatever. Business mind is about using good, solid analysis before you make a decision. Social mind is see that as decision making. By the way, historically, corporations were business heart and business mind. They wanted to maximize profits and they used good management techniques. NGOs were social heart and social mind. And I say, if you really want to capture India number 2 and India number 3, everybody has to move to this quadrant. Business mind and social heart. Social heart and business mind. What you're going to see in Narayana Health today afternoon, when we're going to have a conversation, is they have a social heart. They want to make open heart surgery, healthcare affordable to every Indian. That's social heart. That's doing good. But they have an extremely strong business mind. They practice everything that a for-profit organization practices, but they have a social heart. So really, if India has to close the innovation gap, we have every corporation in India has to have social heart and business mind. And what I'm going to do in the master class is to give you a set of